Welcome everybody. It's good to have you back in for another episode of The Vegas Therapist. I'm your host, Ryan Winder. It's good to have you back in for another great episode. Just a reminder, we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the show this month with a contest giveaway. So make sure you get entered into the contest. You can do that in two ways. First is go on and rate and review the podcast on Apple, iTunes, or wherever you're listening. Make sure that you let me know about that. Or I guess I'll see it on Apple, so I can enter you that way. The second way is by sharing your favorite episode or episodes on Facebook or Instagram, and then making sure that you tag me in it. Again, there's been, I think, some complications with that, so make sure you tag me in it so I know that you've done that. So Facebook, Instagram, share your favorite episode. And the great thing about this contest is that you can do as many episodes as you share. Then I'll enter your name that many times. So if you share 5 episodes, you'll have 5 entries, increasing your chance to win one of the great prizes. The first being a 60-minute coaching / therapy session with myself. The second being a $75 US gift card. The third being a $50 US gift card. So those are the 3 giveaways for the 1-year celebration of the show. And all you got to do is go rate and review it on Apple, or again, share your favorite episode on Instagram or Facebook. Speaking of reviews, I did want to read one review that I got recently. It says, "Love the podcast, really honest stories and reliable guests and relatable guests and topics. Ryan is personable and warm. I think anyone would benefit from doing therapy with him, but since we don't all live in Vegas, we can listen to the podcast." Thanks for that review, Ida4715. Appreciate the feedback and for you listening to the show. The good news is, though, is that she says, even though we all don't live in Vegas, so we can't all have therapy from Ryan, the good news is that that's not necessarily entirely true. With Skype and other methods of therapy, I can do coaching and therapy over those mediums. So if you are interested, you want to reach out, if you feel you benefit from some individual time, just reach out to me, email me at thevegastherapist@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to set up a session with you to have some additional work with. So anyway, so that is a possibility, but thanks again for the review, and keep those reviews coming, especially now, because they will get you entered into the contest. Okay, so really wanted to bring a great episode for you today to kick off this month, to kick off the celebration month. It will just be me today. I don't have any guests, so I just want to really give you some good stuff to think about. And I think I've done that with this episode and bringing some good stories and just a good topic as far as, I think as we go through this thing called life, we all, I think, want as many tools as possible to work through it and to be able to deal with the challenges. So today is kind of my version of a playbook for life, things that we can do to incorporate and get through it in a little bit easier fashion, even though it's not always going to be easy and there's going to be some challenges for all of us. But some of the things that I've kind of taken from were one of the speakers that I heard at ClickFunnels, at the ClickFunnels live event. Her name was Heather Quizell. I hope I'm saying that right. But she gave a really great story on her sort of cheat code for life. So I've kind of just taken that and, made it my own version, the playbook for life. I'm more of a sports guy, so I like that. But she has a great story. If you want to look her up, Heather Quizell, it's Quisel. But she's a business owner and a coach, and she definitely got a remarkable story. I won't go into all the details, but basically she was married with 3 young kids when her husband unexpectedly passed away. But she's taken that tragedy and turned it into an opportunity for growth and success. And so again, she's definitely had to figure out how to get through some difficult things, and so she's got a lot of great information. So again, I'm kind of going to be using some of her framework to pass along some of my information and some things, some stories along the way with my own stuff. But like I said, I think it's going to be a very helpful episode, and for any of us, whatever situation we're in, I think there's going to be a lot of applicable stuff. So all right, I guess one thing to kind of go is that, I mean, obviously, again, whether we look at it as a playbook or a cheat code, however we kind of view the information, obviously, you know, it's not necessarily a shortcut. There really are no shortcuts for dealing with life. I mean, we have to be willing to do whatever work we need to do. But it's really more of an efficient way to go through the challenges, a way to streamline maybe some of the difficulties. And I think these components are not, they're not necessarily like any in particular order. Maybe they are a little bit more fluid in their application, but they're definitely things that can help us move through some of the challenges that we all experience, either daily or now and then as we go through life. Like, Heather, I mean, obviously we don't all lose spouses in that dramatic way, but we have different challenges in our own way, whether it's disease or things like cancer or whatever it might be. All right, but the first element of this playbook has to do with a decision, and we all have to, in any kind of adversity or challenge that we go through, we have to make a decision. And basically it's like, what are we going to do with the obstacle before we even go through it, or before we maybe attempt to start to go through it? And in a sense, we have three choices. And I referred to these three choices earlier in the episode with Mark and his story. But basically, just to kind of reiterate, those choices are: one, we can be bitter about it. We can let that just sort of, whatever we're going through, eat us up inside. And you hear people that kind of are in that state, whether they're like, hey, I'm never going to love again, or trust again, or life's just unfair. And, that bitterness just kind of eats away at us. The second thing that we can decide to do, I guess, is just run from it completely. Just try to escape, whether that's through some type of substance or just getting out of the situation entirely and just never really facing it. Some people choose to do that. The third thing, which I think is the most beneficial to us, even though it can be the most difficult at times, is that we can rise from it. We can do something with it, and we can use it for our mission, and really allow it to turn into something positive, not only for ourselves, but maybe even for other people. There's a great book that I've been reading recently by Ryan Holiday. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And he says in the book, never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition, which is just, full of importance right there. So, how are we going to perceive the obstacle, the way that we look at it? But within those obstacles is a way for us to improve our condition. And if we take it on with that perspective, there's a lot of value that can come from the things that we go through. So when we meet with adversity, we can, in a sense, turn it into our advantage. And I think sometimes we forget, or when we're maybe in a difficult place, we might look at successful people and think, man, they're so lucky. They have it so easy, or they have it so good. But I think as you really take time and you read about people's stories and learn about who they are and how they got to the places they are, most successful people have turned challenges into opportunities for success. And Ryan Holiday's book is all about that, about how people have utilized adversity in a positive way and turned that adversity into beneficial things for themselves and those around them. So ultimately, they are the ones that chose to rise. They're the ones that allowed those challenges to fuel them and to make something of it. And I think, one story I was thinking about was this, where, as far as like people like choosing to rise or not, or, I guess not maybe even being bitter about it, or kind of even sometimes, being a victim or whatever. I was thinking about a couple of clients that I've been working with that have had some long-term addictions, and in this case, addictions to pornography. And, I think sometimes the vibe I get from them is that they just kind of are allowing it to, kind of being a victim with it, like, oh, my wife wasn't as supportive, or this happened, or I didn't get this opportunity, or, it's just so hard, or, and it's all around us. And, and again, just like, oh, different things that they just kind of, or heck, maybe even they're looking at me and saying, my therapist isn't as good as, or he's not helping me as much, or he's not teaching me as many things. And so just this constant kind of like passing the buck about what they've gone through, as opposed to like, again, okay, so your wife hasn't been supportive. Well, what have you done to prove her wrong, or what have you done to kind of show that you have a sense of, you know, willingness to overcome this, or why does it kind of keep setting you back, or why do you allow it to keep setting you back? So again, I think it's just like, how do we approach these things? Do we kind of want to rise from them and turn them into something positive, or do we just kind of like allow ourselves to get eaten up by them and not really do much with it? So within the principle of deciding, I think as we're deciding to do something, especially if we've already kind of gone through it, how we're going to manage it. But I think we also have to be willing to let it go, meaning let it go as in result of maybe the individual that might have caused the obstacle, kind of letting go of the resentment or the pain that kind of goes along with that. I know on many occasions I met with clients that struggle to let it go. They allow their past challenges and hurts to consume them, and they're never really able to quite get over what's happened to them, or again, turn it into something positive. Some of these people take on the victim role in life and never relinquish it. It's just just who they become. Now, I want to make something clear, though. It's like, I'm not saying that people's pain isn't legitimate, nor is it invalid in any way. But at some point, we need to find a way to transform it so it can start to be an asset for us, and not just a constant deficit or something that's negative in our lives. Something even that may even harden us or close us off from so much good that can be there for us. So we need to choose to let it go. We need to choose to let go of that, again, the negative stuff around what we've gone through, and be able to, again, start to transform it. Even, I think an example of that, as far as like letting something go, sometimes we don't even necessarily know we're carrying something, because it could be carried stuff from other people, carried shame. That's a common one. People carry other people's shame, especially parental shame. Maybe it's been passed on to us. And like I said, they don't even realize they're passing it on to somebody else. And so the awareness to be able to let something go can be a part of it too. Like, I was working with a client the other day, and we were kind of talking about this, and she was having a hard time with the possibility of her daughter's sexuality and kind of things that she was exploring and stuff like that. And we kind of started talking about an experience in her life where, she comes from a religious family, and we're talking about, and this happened when she was 21. So she wasn't like a teenager, but she was 21. She got pregnant out of wedlock, and she was talking about how like her parents treated her, and what they did, and how they kind of like, they wanted to keep it hush hush, and they took her to like doctors and kind of like in a secret way, and just really kind of made it more shaming, and didn't really, again, she's 21. It's not like a teenage pregnancy. She's an older person, but just the shame of having a pregnant daughter out of wedlock was just, anyway, it just got passed on to her, and that's how she was made to feel about it. And so now here she is, whatever, 20 years later, dealing with her own daughter, and basically like putting that shame on her for something that she doesn't even necessarily, she's not necessarily not accepting of it. She's kind of having, just some uncertainty about where it's coming from and stuff like that. But it's not like she won't accept her or won't, love her or whatever. But it's just because of that carried shame that she had over her situation. It's like now it's just kind of coming out and coming towards her daughter, and like how are people going to react to her, and how are people going to, look at her, if this is the case, or if she chooses to be, have a different, sexual preference, whatever it might be, right? So the idea of her kind of carrying that shame on and passing it on to her daughter is really more about her parents. And so when we identified that and talked about that, it was just like this light bulb went on, and she's like, oh yeah, I don't need to carry that. I don't need to take that on. That's not mine. And now I can kind of let that go and maybe start to approach my daughter in a much better way, because I don't want her to feel that. I don't want her to feel any kind of shame. I want her to feel supported and loved and cared for, in a way that I didn't feel that. So yeah, sometimes, in that case, there was an awareness that I was holding on to something, or that she was holding on to something. But the idea of being able to let stuff go and be able to kind of give it away is really important in our ability to move on from stuff. So, all right, so we've got those kind of things. So we need to make a decision about how we're going to deal with something. And then whatever is kind of lingering there, we need to let go. And then that's followed up by the idea of doing the time. And doing the time really comes into play as far as this playbook, as far as a cheat code for life and dealing with stuff in a more effective way. Is that, I mean, obviously, and I said this before, that there's not always an easy way. There are things that we just have to go through. Again, no shortcuts. My brothers and I, who, you know, we did the podcast a few months ago about dealing with our dad and his addictions and kind of growing up with that. You know, some issues flared up with him again, and my brothers were, you know, kind of dealing with some of that, and we just kind of were texting back and forth about some different things, and my older brother was kind of venting about the frustrations of this continuing to go on and not ever getting better, and just why, you know, why has he never changed? Why has he never done this or that? And, you know, and my response, even though, you know, I'm not saying I know everything, but my response was just basically, I just kind of feel like he's just never did the time. He's never put in the work. He wanted the easy way through, you know, and he would kind of do things for a period of time until things were comfortable again, and that would be back to the normal behaviors. So doing the time, being able to put in the work to get through something is essential. We have to be willing to do that part. And sometimes doing that time and going through it and allowing that pain to motivate us or to mold us is really important. You know, like if we don't feel it, we don't feel the hurt that we've caused, or we don't maybe feel like how something is like impacting us, then it doesn't necessarily, it's not able to maybe mold us in the way that it needs to. And Heather Quazell gave a great analogy, I thought, in her talk, and I just want to share it with you. And I think for the most part, most of us know the story of Jonah and the whale, where Jonah ends up in the whale because he wasn't willing to do what God wanted him to do. So in a sense, he was doing his time in the whale, and that time, or in that time, you know, that pain that he felt while he was in the whale, or while, you know, the pain that he was experiencing while he was in the whale was really, it was molding him or preparing him. And that's kind of how we can look at our pain. Our pain is taking us to where we need to be. Our pain is helping us to get to a place where we're maybe more empathetic, more understanding, more aware, more, you know, in tune with things, more motivated. So just like the whale was taking Jonah where he needed to be, you know, again, our pain is taking us to where we need to be, and where we can like utilize it in a more effective way. So our pain can be used to help us fulfill our mission. It can help us to become better people. And so when you think about these things, when you think about your pain or things that you've experienced, it's like, when I look back at my own life, you can ask yourself this question: when I look back at my own life, do I see that my pain has brought me to where I am today? Do I recognize how it's helped shape me, mold me, improve me? Or do I look back at it, and again, kind of going back to what we talked before, is have I seen it more harden me or make me more bitter? What have I allowed that pain to do in my life versus have I shaped it into something, or has it shaped me into something better and more valuable versus just rotten, bitter, negative, whatever that is. I know for me, in listening to that talk, in reading the book, The Obstacle is the Way, I've had a new appreciation for the obstacles in my own life. I think things that I used to see as unfair or upsetting or even frustrating, I now see as necessary. And yes, I said the words necessary, and obviously necessary and beneficial, to the point to where I don't think I would be where I am today without it. I definitely don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing as far as therapy and helping people without it. So I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but do the time with your pain. It's molding you. It's taking you to something great. It's helping you to become the person that you need to become in a positive way if you just allow it to. And, you know, and that that can be a great thing for us. Like I said, it can be a great motivating tool. It can be something that allows us to be able to give so much to other people. So I really hope that we can do that, and like I said, look at our pain in a different way and have a different perspective with it, rather than just running from it or being upset about it. So the next principle of the playbook, then, after we do the time, is then sometimes we have to learn to pivot in life. We have to be willing to pivot in order to make change or to go in a different direction, because life doesn't always give us what we want, and some may say it even rarely does. But regardless of what it gives us, we need to be willing to pivot. We need to be willing to not only pivot, but know and believe that we can redesign our lives at any point. But this is going to require that we be willing to shift, that we have to be in a place where, if things, again, don't go the way we want them to, that we can shift and move off that and, reassess, redesign, and move forward in a different direction. Those shifts, they can be big or small. It can be the result of an unexpected death, a divorce, a loss of a job. Heck, for some people, depending on what age you are, it could be the result of getting a bad grade. Again, missing a promotion, something of that nature where, life didn't turn out the way we wanted to. Now, the other thing is too, just because we go through something doesn't necessarily mean, like some people, when they go through a divorce, they're divorced. And so I think they look at that and it's like, okay, well, now I've shifted because now I'm a divorced person. Well, just because we go through something doesn't really necessarily create the pivot on its own. We have to mentally pivot. I was working with a client recently and who had been in a divorce, who'd gone through a divorce, and we were talking. I brought up this principle of pivoting, and this is about 3-4 months after her divorce, and really she had never really pivoted into this mindset of like, okay, now I'm a single person again, or I'm I have a different sense of who I am. I'm not married anymore. I'm not I'm not married, but I don't have the same persona as I once had. Now I am, again, a single person, mom of 2 kids, divorcee, whatever it is. So I have to start redefining who I am rather than living like I'm a married person. I'm a divorcee who is now got options as far as dating and different things of that nature. So definitely needs a pivot and a redefining of sorts. I think in my own life, I remember a huge pivot that I had to be able to do when I was actually applying to grad schools. I started out in Canada at the University of Lethbridge, and the year that I was finishing up my bachelor's, the next year they were starting a counseling program at that university, and so I thought, well, I'll apply there just because, hometown, whatever. I don't have to move my family, just, kind of do everything in one spot. And all the professors that I had that were writing me letters of recommendations to the different schools I was applying for, they're like, oh, you're a shoo-in, you'll get in for sure. Your grades are great, you're great, whatever. You got all this, you've done all these different things, these experiences and stuff. So, not that they were like, I wouldn't even worry about applying anywhere else. It just, they didn't think I had to worry about these other places because I definitely get into this program. Well, I didn't. I didn't get in, and it didn't work out that way. And so I had to be willing to pivot. I had to be willing to do something different, and and be able to take that and go in a different direction, and not, again, just focus on being upset about what I didn't get, but try to move towards something that would now benefit me and kind of redefine my approach to life or where I was heading. I mean, it was still obviously in a counseling direction, but it was going to be done somewhere else, somewhere away from family and home and whatever. And so I think that idea of being able to pivot in those situations, it kind of kind of goes into the next principle within this process or within this playbook, which is that we have to be open to. So when the powers of be take away something special, we have to believe that it's always replaced with even something greater. And I guess in order for us to have that or receive that, we have to be open. We have to be open to the idea that, hey, just because I missed out on this doesn't mean that there isn't something greater out there for me. And and I think for me, the option of staying in Canada, I mean, that was taken away, staying close to family. But I had to be open to change. I had to be open to something different. I couldn't just look at it as something that was being taken from me, but maybe the opportunity for something better, opportunity for something greater. Obviously, that led me to be in Vegas. And I believe for me that, what was taken was replaced by something greater. And, I mean, hey, the Vegas Therapist, the podcast, the brand, I mean, that has a much better ring to it than the Lethbridge Therapist. Not that there's anything wrong with Lethbridge. I really appreciate my listeners in Lethbridge and all the support that they give me, but it's just been a different experience here. It's been a different, I've been exposed to much different experiences and clients and, and opportunities. And so, I'm definitely grateful for all of that and for what it's brought me. And, again, something was taken and something was given. And like I said, for me, I think not only did I have to be open to that, but it was something greater. I have one other quick story about that, about being able to pivot and be open. My brother is a great example of that. In his life, he's done a couple different pivots, with work, to try to improve himself and sacrifice and kind of get better. So he was working as an electrician, working for a guy. I can't remember the process of it exactly, but I know that he just thought he needed to do something different, maybe get into a job where he had a pension and benefits and some different things. So he applied to be a border guard, and he got in and got to the school, and it's a 3-month training thing that they do out in Montreal, Quebec, and you go out there and you're away from family and you do this training, and at any time they can basically tell you you're done and you failed and send you back home, and now you got to reset. So anyway, so he made it all the way through this program, and then he basically, I think it was like the last day or the second to last day, they failed him on something, and just like he was done, it was over. So he put in all that time, trying to change and do something different, and it was gone like that. And there's no like appealing, there's no hey, what about second opportunity? It's like when they see something that they don't like, you're done. And so that's obviously something very hard. And so from the standpoint of something being taken from him, I think when he came home, he was pretty depressed and upset, obviously. But then a couple months later, he gets this job opportunity to teach electrical stuff at the college and go into that realm. And I think he would say, if he was sitting here, that's been replaced by something greater. He doesn't have to do the stuff at the border. He has a better job. He's in a situation where he can teach and be in an academic environment and get the benefits and everything that's with that, and he's excelled and done great with that. So again, something taken and something greater given, but we have to be in a place where we can stay open to receive that. Otherwise, maybe we miss out. If we get bitter and hard and and just sit around and don't do anything, then maybe that doesn't come to us because we're not open to it, and we're not looking to kind of see, well, maybe how does this loss help me, or how does it maybe turn me towards where, hey, maybe there is something better out there for me. So just keeping those things in mind I think is really important, and being able to being able to be open and the ability to pivot, really, like I said, I kind of brought them together because I really think they do go hand in hand. The last thing that I'll say in regards to these steps is that in all of it takes focus. We have to be able to focus in these principles. We have to be able to focus on what's needed in our lives. Sometimes it may be tweaks in just our language, things that we say or how we say things. I know when I'm talking about worth and value with clients, I had a client today, And he was like, well, it was just it was just a minor thing, or I was just a PE teacher, I was just doing something, whatever. But just that language of disqualifying or not appreciating or not seeing our value doesn't help. So if it's just something as simple as like, hey, I was able to add value to the school because I was a PE teacher and I helped them with their PE, that's great. But if it's just like, I was just a PE teacher, then I'm already diminishing the value. So just our language with things can be so important in the way that we, deal with things, the way that we receive things, the way that we try to move on from things. Again, language is very powerful, so we shouldn't underestimate it, because it really does have a psychological impact on us, depending on, again, the way that we're using it. Equally powerful is meaning, the way that we attach meaning to things in our lives and certain words. Just example, like the word failure. How do we look at failure? What meaning do we attach to it? Do we attach the meaning that it's a reflection of who we are, or is failure defined as just something that's a stepping stone in life, something to learn from, something that life really requires as a way to kind of get us to where we need to go? So just that difference in meaning can have all the impact in us as far as how we look at things and move on from things. And so just again, important to language and meaning. Life requires us to also be constantly reframing. Those things obviously take focus too. So how do I reframe the way I look at this, or how do I see this event in a different way so that it can be a benefit to me rather than something that's negative? Same thing, if there's a behavior that we want to change, we have to have focus for it. Things don't just magically change without a level of focus. So there are the principles. We have to decide, we have to let go, we have to be open, we have to focus, we have to do the time, and I know there's one other, we have to pivot. And again, in whatever order we have to do those things, and maybe it's a little bit fluid in kind of the way we approach them, but those are all essential things for the playbook of life and how we go through it and how we deal with it. And I think as we apply those principles, things, again, won't necessarily be completely easier, but they'll help us get through it in a much more effective way. And as we get through the other side, it will be much more of a benefit for us than it will be something that's negative or something that we look at as not being a positive. So I hope that you will take those things and apply them and really look to see how you can work through stuff in a more effective way. Again, just kind of going back into the month, I got a great month of shows for you. Next week's episode is gonna be awesome. I got a guest who's gonna be with us and talk about trauma, and trauma specifically to the October 1 event that happened in Vegas. So I kind of want to have a little bit of a Vegas theme to the month. And I think you'll really appreciate her story and what she has to offer, and talking about trauma and getting through something and going through something of that extreme nature. And unfortunately, that's a big part of our society. A lot of people, more and more people, are being exposed to those types of events and having to deal with the impact that goes with those things. So I look forward to having her on and being able to share that with you. Again, if you haven't done so, go rate and review the show on iTunes. Also, that will get you entered into the podcast, the contest for this month, as we're celebrating the 1-year mark. It's been a great year. And also remember to share your favorite episodes on Facebook or Instagram and tag me in it, and that will get you entered into the contest as well. All right. And also, too, just like the review said, hey, I am in Vegas. You might not be in Vegas. You can listen to the podcast, but you can also reach out to me, thevegasTherapist@gmail.com. If you have any questions or want topics on the show or want some more detailed coaching or therapy, just reach out to me and we'll get that going for you. All right. This is Vegas Therapist Ryan Weiner signing off.